lesson today is section 2.2, and it's starting to get into operations now. So 2.2 will be addition. On Thursday, guys, we'll do subtraction and then multiplication division are really similar, so they put it into one little chunk. So I think this is where it starts getting kind of tricky. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try my best to teach you how the book teaches you, but then also you use Mollyisms or whatever and give you kind of like layman's terms and little tricks that I do in my head where it's not always just methodical. It's just like, think this way, okay? So the first thing they show you guys with adding integers is that it can be done on a number line. Sure, that's great, but it's probably not the most practical because when we start getting to bigger numbers, you're not going to want to have to draw a number line for everything. But I want to do these to show you, one, you can use them, and two, you're going to see a pattern happening, okay? So it's not always, we're not going to be able to fit everything, but let's like say this is 0 right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be right here. So what they want us to do is they want us to start at 5, but they want us to add a -1. Well, if we added a +1, which direction would we go and what would our answer be? To the right, and it'd be +6. So could be adding a -1 do the same thing? No. When you add a negative number, you're actually spending money or going in debt, so you're actually taking money away. So when you have 5 plus a -1, you're actually moving 1 to the left. There's my -1. So where does that land me, guys? That's my answer. What's my answer end up being? 4. And you're going to quickly see a pattern, okay? I'll show you the pattern at the end of all of this. So anytime you add a negative number, you're moving to the left. All right, again, 0 is not going to really work. So I'm just going to make -8 like right here, guys. It's a little sloppy, all right? So he's my starting point, but what I have to do is I have to add -2 to it. If I was adding +2, I'd move to the right, but since I'm adding -2, I'm going to add 2 to the left. 1, 2. Where does that make me end up? -10, absolutely. More in debt is how I say it, okay? Last but not least, -8 is where we're starting, so I'm going to write -8 right here.
So it doesn't matter where you put it at?
No, because did you have the mean teachers in school where like 0 has to be labeled in the middle and every tick mark has to, no. In this case, it wouldn't make sense. We wouldn't have room. Yeah, so it doesn't matter. Just maybe kind of in the middle so we can move either direction, all right? But notice on number 3, guys, we're actually adding a +3. So which direction are we going to move?
To the right.
To the right this time. 1, 2, 3. So we're actually adding 3. So where will that land us? -7, -6, -5. So this answer was 4. This answer was -10. This answer was -5. All right? What is the point of this? Why did I do it for sure? I do not use number lines with adding, but I want you to show the pattern that we must learn when we're doing addition with integers. If the signs are opposite, so notice this was a +5 and a -1, even though it says adding, you didn't really add. You actually subtracted. What's the difference between 5 and 1? 4. And you gave it the sign of the bigger number. 5 was bigger than -1, and it was a positive number, so that's a +4. When the signs are the same, notice -8 and -2 are both the same, you actually did add. What's 8 plus 2? 10. But then you give it the sign they share. Notice they're both negatives, and so it was a -10. This example right here is like number 1. The signs are opposite, so you don't really add, you subtract. What's the difference between 8 and 3? 5, but then you give it the sign of, I put air quotes, bigger numbers. That's kind of funny putting it on there like that. But absolute value-wise, which one's a bigger number, -8 or 3? The 8, and what's its sign? Negative, so that's why the answer is negative. So those are going to be the 2 rules that we're going to see here and written out, and we're going to have practice and so forth. When we do this, I'll do it with the rules, but then I'll also do the Molly way and kind of try to make it, some of you guys just kind of like number sense and just make it make sense, okay? So let's look at this first example. We're going to add 2 numbers with the same sign. What do they mean by that? That means they're either both positive or both negative, all right? Step 1, just add their absolute values. Add the numbers up like normal, all right? Step 2, use their common sign. So whatever sign they share, that's the answer to, or that's the sign of your answer, okay? So do you guys agree that they're both negative? So both negative. So since they're both negative, we're just going to add 19 plus 3. Normal adding. So what's that going to be, 22? Is that okay? Put our 2 down, carry our 1. But our final answer won't be 22. What will it be? Negative 22. Because step 1 says add their absolute values, but step 2 says use their common sign. Since they were both negative, that means my answer must be negative. What do I say? I say if you're $3 in debt and then you go spend another $19, you're more in debt. You're now a total of $22 in debt, okay? The negative is spending or debt, so we have nothing trying to bail us out of the hole. We're just moving more in the negative direction, okay? Let's look at this one. This is the same thing. They have both negative, right? So since they both have the same sign, we're going to add them like normal. 30 plus 12. Can you guys see that okay? What's that give? 42? Is that what it ends up being? And then once you get your answer, you just ask yourself what's the sign of your answer. Well, what was the sign that they both shared? Negative, so it's negative 42. And what's kind of neat, and again, I use the word neat when you want it, the same rule works for how we add normal numbers, right? What's 9 plus 4, guys? 13. It's a positive 13, right? So the rule is add them like normal, 9 plus 4, and give them the sign they share. They're both what? Positive. So look at our answer. It's a positive. So our normal addition rule that we learned in chapter 1 still works with integers. Is that okay? I like this one. It's not bad. You add because you see the add, and like if they're both negative, you're more in debt, so the answer is negative and so forth. What gets tricky is the top of page 2. When those signs don't match, what do? Okay? So when you're adding two numbers with different signs, we have to do something else, okay? We actually find subtraction. Minus means subtract. So you actually take the larger of the absolute values and subtract the smaller of the absolute values. So you actually find the difference at first, and then you use the sign of the larger number, and again, air quotes, larger number. The whole idea there, guys, why we're not adding is because when you have something positive and something negative, they start kind of canceling each other out, and it's not growing in the same direction. It's actually canceling each other out, which is technically subtraction, okay? So the rule is, notice that we have opposite signs. So what's the rule for opposite signs? Subtract, and then give it the sign of the larger number. So what's 26 take away 1? 25. And which of these two numbers was technically the largest absolute value-wise? 26, and 26 is what type of number?
Positive.
Positive. Yes, ma'am.
I was trying to do that on like the easier ones on the front page, that's why I kept getting them wrong. So I was trying to do like these rules on those.
On the first three with the number line. Absolutely. And that's what this is trying, the number line's trying to show that, but I think it's harder. Let's make a note. This is positive since 26 is positive. And that was the bigger number, right? I'm just making notes so later on when you're like, why did we leave it positive? All right, the Mollyism, you have $26, but then you go spend $1. How much money do you have? $25 still, right? So positive is what you have, negative is what you spend. Let's look at this. Opposite signs. What's the rule for opposite signs? Subtract and give it the sign of the bigger number. So 18 take away 2 technically is what? 16, but it's going to be a negative 16 because the 18 over here is the bigger number. Negative since 18 is negative. Again, I'm thinking you have $2, but then you go spend $18. What happened? You went in the hole. Did you go in the hole the full $18? No, because you had $2 to help you out a little bit, but you still went in the hole $16. All right, so then this is just the same thing, guys. I don't know why they like make it look different. We're doing the same thing. All three of these guys are adding numbers with opposite signs, so we're just going to find the difference of all of them and give them the signs of the larger number. So we're going to have 54 minus 20. What's that give us? 34? Is that okay? But since 54 is the bigger one, it's negative, our answer is negative 34. Is that what you guys got on that one? Does that look okay? Again, maybe you're already in the hole $54, but then someone gives you a 20. You're like, okay, good. It didn't get me out of the hole, but it got me a little bit further out of debt. And again, why is this negative? Because 54 was negative. All right. 7 plus negative 2, they have opposite signs, so we're going to do 7 minus 2 is 5. But what's our final answer going to be, guys?
5.
Positive 5, because the 7 was positive. They're trying to trick you, but technically there's opposite signs, so we're going to do 3 minus 0 is 3. But what's our answer going to be? You got it, because the 3 was negative. These, honestly, and I think you will agree with me, when this is right in front of you and it's what we're doing, it's not hard. Where does it get hard is when I give you the worksheet and they're all scrambled and you have to remember it yourself. So like, I was trying to tell the first class that the math and the operations themselves are not the difficult part, it's remembering the rule, okay? So remember, same sign, add, use the sign. Opposite sign, subtract, bigger number sign. Okay, and kind of just keep repeating that as you do your worksheet, because otherwise you won't make mistakes. It's just remembering those rules. All right, last thing is there's a special kind of rule that when you add an opposite of a number to its opposite, you get 0. Basically, they cancel each other out, okay? Think of the number line, like if you have negative 2 and you have positive 2, adding 2 to it gets you to 0, right? Or taking away 2 from it gets you to 0. It's just this whole teeter-totter of balance, okay? So if you have $18, but then you go spend $18, what do you have? $0, right? Or if you're $64 in debt and somebody gives you $64, you just paid off your debt and you have $0. So anytime you see, and be careful because they're going to trick you up. They're going to have 64 and 64. They're not opposites, right? Those are both positive. So you have to make sure they have those opposite signs to know that they cancel out to be that 0. Because otherwise, if they're both negative, you're double in debt, right? Or if they're both positive, you're like, I have twice as much money. Woohoo! I feel like we don't see those problems as much. All right. The next thing, guys, before we get to evaluating in word problems is, can you handle multiples in a row? And you can. What I want you to understand is we still have not learned subtraction, multiplication, or division. So this is not PIMDAS. This is literally move left to right. Take the first 2 numbers, add it, add the third number, add the fourth number, one at a time, okay? So what we're going to do is we're first going to focus on the first 2 numbers. Once we get that answer, we're going to worry about adding negative 15 to it, okay? Some of you can probably just do this in your head. You don't have to go off to the side to do it. What is 6 plus negative 2? 4. How did you do that, Devin? Well, she knew that we had opposite signs, so opposite signs mean subtract. Give it the sign of the larger number. Which of those 2 numbers is larger? The 6, so it's positive. But who do I still have behind me? Plus negative 15. So what I've done is I've reduced it from 3 numbers down to 2 numbers. Is that okay? You guys see that? So then again, it's the same rule. Opposite sign, subtract. So 15 minus 4 gets you what? 11, right? But what's the sign going to be?
Negative.
Negative. Why?
15.
The 15's the bigger, and he's negative. So all I did was the first 2 to get that, and I said, okay, negative 15 still tagging along, so I still need to do that part. Is that okay? Be careful on 15 because you're going to want to group and group. You can't. Order of operations says go left to right. So we're going to do the first 2 and then add the third and get a number and then add the fourth. All right? So we have to do these 2 first. What is 5 plus a negative 3? 2. Why? Because opposite signs you subtract and you give it the sign of the bigger number. The bigger number is 5, so it's positive. But what do I still have behind it? 12 plus negative 14. See, all I did was take 2 numbers and find the sum to reduce it to 1, okay? Then I'm going to do this, 2 plus 12. That's nothing new. What's 2 plus 12, guys? 14. But who do I still have tagging behind it? Negative 14. And what did we just learn about a number and its opposite?
0.
It cancels itself out, and you get 0 there. Say you don't remember that, go over here because they're opposite signs. What's 14 minus 14? 0. So the opposite sign rule still works. So I think they just try to give you little tricks to help you, like shortcuts, but ultimately if you remember those rules, you'll be fine. All right. Yes, ma'am.
So when dealing with this, we don't do the order.
Well, because, I mean, it still is technically order of operations. What's the only operation there is? Plus, plus, and plus. And so the only operation is addition, and what's addition do? You move left or right. So it is kind of order of operations, but you just don't have any other operations other than simply addition, okay? Because parentheses, that's something to kind of keep in mind. These parentheses don't mean I have something to do inside. It means I don't want a negative by a positive. And so it's just like just saying this is 5 plus a negative 3, but I don't want that plus and that negative to be right. Does that kind of make sense? All right, down here, guys, basically all we need to do is sub in our x and sub in our y to make it look like what we just did above. Keep in mind, whenever you have this right here, what operation is this when they're shoved right next to each other? Multiplication. So the first thing I'm going to do is write it with the new numbers, all right? They want x first. What's our x? Negative 6. Plus 3 times y, but what is our y? 2. Do you guys see what I did there? I'm just taking that expression and plugging in x and plugging in y. This is order of operations, right? We have two operations, addition and multiplication. Which one do we need to do first? Multiplication. Is that all right? So that negative 6 in front will hang out, but what's 2 times 3? Just positive 6, right? Is that okay so far? What happens when you add a negative 6 plus a positive 6? What happens? 0. They're going to cancel each other out. You're $6 in debt, but you found $6 on the floor. It's your lucky day. You just paid off your debt. Whenever you have things like shoved, and this is something I think, Jacob, did you ask about this last week or whatever? It's another way to show multiplication when you have things just shoved next to each other, okay? So 3y is another way of saying 3 times y. So when we plug this y in here, it doesn't make it 32, it makes it 3 times 2. So it's just something like, so Tiffany, we have like multiple ways. We have the multiplication symbol, we have the dot, we have parentheses, but we also have just shoved letters and numbers that represents multiplication. It's just one of those new ways of showing it. On 17, guys, it's strictly adding two negative numbers, right? What is x? Negative 13. Plus what is y? Negative 9. Do we typically have a plus and negative right next to each other? No, so I usually put parentheses. Am I the mean teacher that will mark you off if you don't put those parentheses? No. But I kind of like you just to get into the correct etiquette, basically. Like when you move on to 112, they'll be like, there's not supposed to be a plus by a minus, you know. This is something you forget because we did it on the front page. If you have the same sign, what do? You do actually add them and give them that sign they share, okay? So they have the same sign. So we're going to do 13 plus 9 over here. What does that get us? 22. But our answer is going to be negative 22. Why? They were both negative. So it's this whole idea that you had spent $13 and $9 that day. So how much total money did you spend that day? $22. You're going in the same direction, so that's why you add it. And those are easy, but they're easy to forget because you get in that mindset of subtract and give it the sign to share. Subtract and give it the sign to share. Are there any questions on 17? Let's look at this word problem. Last one here, guys. If the temperature was negative 7 degrees Fahrenheit at 6, it's really cold, right? But this is our starting point. We're going to start at negative 7, okay? But then it rose 4 degrees. What operation will show rising 4 degrees? Plus, right? By 7. And then it rose another 7 degrees. So what are we going to do? Add 7 more. From 7 to 8. What was the temperature at 8? Okay, so what temperature did we start at? Negative 7. And then how much did it rise at first? 4. And then how much more did it rise? Plus 7. And just to kind of keep in mindset of like what are some other words, you could say, okay, by 8 p.m. it dropped 3 degrees. And what would you do with drop? You subtract or a plus negative there, okay? So all we did with this word problem was try to pick out key words. Rose means add. Drop would mean subtract. And just do the order of operations left to right first, okay? What is negative 7 plus 4? You got it. Opposite signs mean subtract, give it the sign they share. But I still have to tack on that 7 on the back. What's negative 3 plus 7?
4.
4, because opposite signs you subtract, to get it the sign of the bigger number. And what can't we forget since it's a word problem, guys? It's 4 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? Because my math lab is going to make us forget those units.